Hello again and welcome to the Warhammer 40k Imperial Guard Tactics video, and today guys we'll be continuing with our Militarum Tempestus Scions Tactics series, and we'll be taking a look at the Thetoid Eagles. This will be, as always, an in-depth tactical review of this regiment. We will be covering everything from the doctrine, warlord trait, unique stratagem and relic, and not only that, but we'll start looking into the best way that you can apply this regiment to your army. Do the Thetoid Eagles work well as a standalone Scion force, or are they best used as an allied detachment? Now, before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Dan for sending in some awesome pictures of his converted Talan Scion models. These guys look absolutely awesome. Honestly, some of the coolest conversions and theming that I have seen for Imperial Guard models. Now, I've used two of the pictures that Baz sent in today. One for this front page picture and another one for the tactics page, which will be coming up in a moment. But there are loads more. So what I'm going to do is post a link down in the description below. And I highly recommend you all go and take a look at those pictures because they're absolutely stunning. The gas masks, the converted close combat weapons, the different sergeants, even just the basic lasgun guys are all absolutely fantastic. And the colour scheme just ties it all together really, really well. And if anyone else has got any cool pictures that they want me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. But now, without further ado, let's take a look at these Thetoid Eagles and really get a better understanding of what makes this regiment tick. Now, as always, guys, this is going to be a deep dive analysis of this regiment trait. We're going to be getting into the fine detail and nitty-gritty of the Thetoid Eagles. And the first thing that we want to take a look at is their regimental doctrine. Now, it's called Predatory Strike, and essentially it's a slightly different version of the basic Scion regiment doctrine that you get in the Imperial Guard Codex. How it works is unmodified sixes to hit within half range cause an additional hit. Classic exploding sixes that you see in many different game systems. And I'll be honest, guys, it's a really powerful one. I really like it, and it's probably one of the best things about this regiment is this regimental doctrine. Now, there are a couple of differences that we want to take a look at between this and the basic one in the Guard Codex. So the one in the Guard Codex is not unmodified, it's 6 pluses. That's a double-edged sword because it means if you move, then with heavy weapons you get a -1, you can't get those exploding sixes. But there are ways, if you can get +1 to hit on that regimental doctrine, then you can start getting exploding 5s and 6s. However, with the Thetoid Eagles, it's unmodified 6s to hit. So it doesn't matter if your opponent's got -1 to hit modifiers on them, doesn't matter if you move, doesn't matter if you are trying to boost your guys with extra ballistic skill stuff, it doesn't work, it's just 6s will cause exploding hits. So that's great. Another key difference between this and the basic book one is this just causes an additional hit. You just get the extra hit. The basic book one, Stormtroopers, that is an additional shot, which you have to then roll to hit with again. So overall, I would say that Predatory Strike is better than Stormtroopers. Okay? Simply because more often than not you're going to encounter -1 to hit modifiers in competitive lists, and also Scions are a mobile army. You're going to be on the move as well. You're going to be deep striking down, jumping out of Valkyries, unloading out of Torx Primes. Those Torx Primes themselves are going to be bouncing around the battlefield. So you're going to have a lot of -1s to hit affecting your army. So the fact that you just get unmodified 6s to hit, that's absolutely fantastic. Now, we can also draw some comparisons to the Orc special rule, Daka. Now, how that one works is if you get a 6, you automatically hit and you get another shot. Now, Predatory Strike doesn't have that first bit. An unmodified 6s to hit within half range causes an additional hit. That doesn't necessarily mean that the first hit still hits. If someone has a ridiculous amount of -1 to hit modifiers on you, and -to hit modifiers, and you're hitting something like -5 or something ridiculous, and your Scions just can't physically hit the enemy, that first shot still goes. But if you get a 6, you get that additional hit. Whereas the Orc one, they can never beat that first shot hits on a 6, and you get another shot. But it's another shot, not another hit. So it's kind of you see how the rules are similar, but they actually work quite differently. And also don't forget the Orc Daka doesn't have a range modifier. I'd actually say probably overall, and this is a little embarrassing for the Scions, I'd probably say Daka is better overall. Simply because they always hit on 6s, there's no range modifier, and when you get a 6 to hit, you do have to roll another shot. Yes, that's true, to be fair, but that other shot can also get a 6 to hit, and then it still hits regardless of modifiers. Now, another comparison that we can draw as well is between the Thetoid Eagles and the Iotan Gorgons. Now, the Iotan Gorgons are another regiment trait that is available to the Scions through the Greater Good book, and I will be doing a video on that in the future. Now, their trait works very similarly to the Thetoid Eagles. It's called Resolute Heroism. It's essentially the same rule, but it's unmodified 6s when targeting the nearest enemy unit. Now, a lot of people think that that's quite good and probably better than the Predatory Strike Thetoid Eagle trait because you don't have to get as close, you can be shooting at max range. That is true, and it is a difficult decision that a lot of players have to make when trying to decide which kind of exploding 6s they want. But let me settle that argument right here, right now. It is very easy to overlook the fatal flaw in the Iotan Gorgon trait Resolute Heroism, which is quite simply, it only affects infantry. I have overlooked this until making this video. I overlooked this problem. Predatory Strike on the Thetoid Eagles, that regimental doctrine affects every unit. Torcs Primes, your infantry, your command squads, your commanders, affects everything. But the Iotan Gorgon trait, Resolute Heroism, it only affects infantry units. It's just a terrible fatal flaw. I don't know why Games Workshop restricted it, but because of that, it doesn't affect your Torcs Primes. No exploding 6s on Daka Primes. I'm not interested. I would pick Thetoid Eagles every single time over Iotan Gorgons, simply because of that distinction. Now, overall, I would say this regimental doctrine is a solid mid-tier choice to be used with your Scions. Is it as good as the Lambton Lions? Probably not, to be honest, because this only affects ranged weapons, whereas the Lambton Lion trait affects all weapons. But it is solid mid-tier, and to be honest, comparing the other regiment traits to the Lambton Lions can be a little harsh and a little unfair. If we were to compare this to ones like the Iotan Dragons or the Capic Eagles, I would say this can go toe-to-toe with those very nicely, and it's a good standalone trait as well. Now, moving away from the regimental doctrine, let's now take a look at the unique relic available to the Thetoid Eagles, and it's called the Fire of Judgment, and it's a relic hotshot las pistol, but it has quite a few improvements over the basic hotshot las pistol. Number one, it has a 12-inch range. That's absolutely fantastic. It means we can finally use this thing from deep strike. The basic hotshot las pistol only has a 6-inch range, and because of that, I think it's practically useless. Second great thing about it is it fires 2 shots, not 1. And the last bit, which is probably the best thing about it, is any hits it gets, causes a mortal wound, just straight up. Now that is absolutely fantastic because Scions traditionally struggle with mortal wound output. Yes, you can take some psychers, but you don't get access to any snipers or anything like that. So being able to get some additional mortal wound output is absolutely great. And don't forget, guys, it's essentially free. You know, there are relics out there like the relic plasma pistol that I believe it's the Iotan Dragons get. But you have to pay 5 points for the plasma pistol to then replace with a relic plasma pistol. This one's straight up free. It's great. And I would say that I really like this relic. And even though it's not a buffing relic, and I traditionally would say, well, if it's not a buffing relic for Scions, leave it at home. But in this case, it's a good source of mortal wound output. And I would have this as an additional relic to your force. I wouldn't have it as your main one. But if you want to spend a CP and before the beginning of the game and you haven't got any other relics that you're willing to buy, this one's a good one to get. And like I said, I do quite like it. Now the best way to run this relic, I would say, is in your drop commander. The Tempestus Prime, who's going to be leading the Scions, which are going to be deep striking into the battlefield, because it allows him to drop down and essentially plink 2 wounds off something. There's a good chance that you're going to hit with both of these shots. You've got a better chance of doing that than not. And that's a dead Primaris Marine. That is a dead Terminator. Even an Assault Terminator, which are making a bit of a comeback. It's really good at either killing a 2-wound model or finishing off an enemy character. It's actually quite versatile. It's mortal wound output, guys. It can't really be overstated how good it is. Now, like I said, I wouldn't put this on your front line commander, and I wouldn't put it on your warlord, but this is definitely good to come in on your semi-sacrificial Tempestus Prime, the guy that's going to be getting in up close and personal with the enemy. Now, moving from the relic onto the warlord trait, this is a bit of a funny one, and I can't decide whether I like it or not, to be honest. It's called Uncompromising Persecution. Now, how it works is unmodified 6s to wound with hotshot weapons at AP -4 when you're within 6 inches of the person with this warlord trait. It's a tricky one. Now, what you've got to remember is there's no half range factor on this. So when I first saw it, I was thinking, oh, well, you might want to consider using this on your guys that are dropping down and doing first rank fire, second rank fire. But then that's actually not necessarily a great choice, because those guys won't be getting the most out of it, because they won't be in half range, they won't be getting exploded 6s, because they have to stay 9 inches, be deep striking. And they won't be getting the maximum number of shots, so you'll only be getting like 16 shots, 16, 18 shots from the hotshot lasguns. You know, you really want to be using plasma. So I wasn't sure about this one. And it's a bit of a funny one, because when you think about it, it's affecting your hotshot weapons, which are already AP -2. And that's pretty good. And against most competitive lists these days, you're coming across a lot of invulnerable saves. I mean, hell, Primaris Impulsor spam is making a huge ripple in the competitive community at the moment. And they've got a 4+ invuln. So being AP -4 is okay, but you're not going to be getting past the invulns of those things. Though, to be fair, you don't really want to be shooting them. You want to be shooting things like infantry with this. So it is a tricky one. How I think the best way you take advantage of this warlord trait, if you're going to take it, is on your castle commander. The one that's rolling with the Taurox primes up the middle of the board with some squads inside. And I would give those squads hotshot volley guns. Because when you jump out, your hotshot volley guns have got the range to take advantage of the middle of the board. And them being AP -4 is quite good. And don't forget, hotshot volley guns are strength 4, which means unless they're shooting something tough like a Leman Russ or an Imperial Knight, they're wounding pretty much anything on 5s. So that means you've got a good. There's no risk of wasting them by slamming them into vehicles. Having 2, 3, maybe even 4 squads, maybe 2 regular squads and a couple of command squads, just rocking hotshot volley guns and all stringing so that they're in range of this warlord trait, you could actually put down quite a lot of good AP -4 firepower, which could start shredding light vehicles and medium and heavy infantry. So it's not a bad thing at all. To be honest, it is really good at dealing with Primaris, because it means that if you any 4s and 5s you get are going to be being AP -2, and that means that they're still damaging the Primaris Marines. Any 6s you get are going to be no armor save. Other way of looking at it is sling these guys into toughness 8 stuff that they're going to wound on 6s, and when they do wound, they're going to be cutting through the armor on AP -4. However, the reason I'm not a huge fan of that line of argument of thinking is because the most common toughness 8 thing out there that you face competitively is a Knight, which has a 5+ invulnerable save. So this this Warlord trait wouldn't help you against that. So I actually think it's best to see it as a boost against Primaris Marines rather than a way of taking out vehicles. Now the last thing to talk about is the unique stratagem for the Thetoid Eagles. This one is just straight up good. Okay, it is full charge, it's 1 CP, select a Thetoid Eagle Torx Prime in the shooting phase, and it can reroll all hit rolls against units within 12 inches. Now what is good about this trait is that you pick your unit, not you pick an enemy unit and you get reroll hits against it. Now why is that important? Quick swig of iron brew. Why is that important? It means you can split fire. So if you select an enemy unit and then you put everything into it, then it's a bit overkill potentially. But by selecting your own unit, you could use this to finish off multiple small units. So your Dakar Prime, which is one that you probably want to use this on because it's against units within 12 inches, not within half range. So bear that in mind for your punchy primes. It means you could finish off multiple units at once. There could be 2 or 3 5-man marine units or a couple of other units in range, and you could just go, yeah, I'm going to select Torx Prime, and I'm going to put my Torx Gatling Cannon into that unit, and I'm going to put my Hot Shot Volley Guns into another unit. 2 units, and I get real hits against all of them. That's really good. Now, slightly out of sequence, there's one other thing that I actually forgot to mention about the Warlord trait for the Thetoid Eagles, which is it's not just infantry units which get affected by this. It's any friendly unit with that's Capic Eagles that's within 6 inches of the Warlord. So this could actually affect your Torx Primes if you've given them Hot Shot Volley Guns, and that's the best weapon you want to be giving them as your side weapons, not on the turret. So when you think about it like that, having the your Warlord with your castle units with a couple of with 3, 4 Torx Primes, and then you're able to put those shots into pretty much any target, and there's a good chance you'll get some AP -4. It's good. So I think the best way to look at Uncompromising Persecution is it shouldn't be your first choice of Warlord trait. I would access it via the Progeny of Conflict stratagem, and I would take it only if you're taking 3, 4, 5 Torx Primes, and that you're going to use around that Warlord trait. Otherwise, I would not necessarily. I wouldn't consider it. I would use things like Master of Command as my primary Warlord trait. But to be honest, I think Master of Command is the best Warlord trait for all Scion regiments. This is just a good backup if you're taking a lot of Torx Primes. So that's all the regimental doctrines, relics, Warlord traits, and stratagems covered for the Thetoid Eagles. But the most important question to ask is, what's the best way to run these guys? Are they best used as a standalone force? Are they best used as an allied force? Can they do both? And the answer is, guys, these guys can happily do both. They can be standalone or they can be an allied force. They have enough going for them in the regimental doctrine alone that makes them a good standalone force. But then when you add in things like the stratagem, which you would take when you're taking a lot of Scions, and the relics, quite nice to have. Yeah, overall, it's a good standalone doctrine. How I would run my Thetoid Eagles is in a standard Scion force. I'm talking you want a couple of Valkyries, you want 4 or 5 Tauroxes, lots of 5-man infantry squads with a nice, healthy mix of probably 66% plasma, 33% hotshot volley guns. That's probably the best way to run these guys. And how to get the most out of Predatory Strike in a pure standalone force, you're going to want to obviously have your deep strike guys coming in with the plasma. They'll be able to get in half range, which means they'll be getting unmodified 6s, exploding. That's great. Really don't underestimate that. You'll probably get an extra couple of overcharged plasma shots from, let's say, a 2-man squad with a couple of plasma guns, or a 4-man plasma command squad. Also, because unmodified 6 to hit, these guys, when you're taking the standalone force and you're using a lot of Torx Primes, they're actually really mobile. Because yes, when you're moving around, your Torx Primes will have -1 to hit, but they will also have exploding 6s when they're in half range. So it means that whilst you're moving around, you're making up for any lost hits with the exploding 6s. Now, The problem with this regiment trait and when taking these guys as a standalone force is you've got to get up close and personal to the enemy. In most situations, that's fine. If you're assaulting a mostly shooty army, you don't mind getting up close and personal. But if you start taking your Torx Primes within range of a Marine army, even just a standard Marine army, or any kind of assault army whatsoever, they're going to start locking up and tagging your Torx Primes, which is then going to mean they're not going to be able to shoot. So it does require a bit of finesse. You can't just drive up to the enemy, blast them, and expect to win. You've got to be able to drive up to them and definitely kill what you're going to be driving up to, because if you don't, if they can, they will tag you and they will lock up your units, and they may even wrap and trap your Torx Primes, which is what you don't want to do. It's not so bad with the infantry because you can always fall back and use get back in the fight to still be able to shoot, but it is a bit of a high risk, high reward thing with your Torx Primes. If you were to run these as an allied detachment, again, it's a fairly standard allied detachment. I would take a battalion, couple of Tempestus Primes, and 3 plasma squads. 3 5-man squads, 2 plasma guns in each one. I'd run one of your Tempestus Primes with the Rod of Command. He's going to be issuing 2 orders, and I would give the other Tempestus Prime the Relic Hotshot Las Pistol if you can afford the extra Relic. And that way you have 3 plasma squads dropping down. You can give them all reroll 1s to hit. They can drop in within half range. They'll get loads of exploding attacks, and then one of your Tempestus Primes for free, apart from 1 CP, can just blast off a couple of shots and get a couple of mortal wounds, and that's really good. And that's a nice cheap way of dropping in and causing significant damage to the enemy in a nice compact allied detachment, very similar to the Iotan Dragons, which are one of the good allied detachments as well. So overall, I guess when you're considering the Thetoid Eagles and you're trying to make your mind up about them, I would say they are probably the second best standalone regiment, and they're a really good take-all-comers regiment. Unlike some of the other ones, like the Capic Eagles, and I know I ragged on the Capic Eagles a lot during their review, they're not quite as bad as that, as I said. They're okay, but they're very, very specific, and you have to build around the trait. With the Capic Eagles, you don't have to build around the trait at all. They've got a good, solid trait, middle of the road. They've got a good, solid, normal relic. Their Warlord trait is okay. You have to kind of work around it, but you can make it work in every game. It will always be relevant. And the stratagem, again, will always be relevant. And that's one of the greatest strengths of the Thetoid Eagles, and one of the things which makes them, I would consider, probably the second best regiment trait. And that's saying, that is saying a lot, because they are not situational. They're not situational, and their regimental doctrine affects all their units. Their relic is essentially free. They're not a buffing one. And their warlord trait is not situational, and their stratagem is not situational. And that's what makes them so strong. They're not the best. That is unreservedly held by the London Lions, but they're a good second. That, in terms of my arbitrary rankings that I place these guys in, I put them as second because they, like I said, they're not situational and they are standalone, and that is a key part. I think there are better allied detachments than these guys. That probably goes to the Iotan Dragons because of the rapid fire buffs. And there are better standalone ones like the London Lions. But these guys can do it just fine. They're a good take-all-comers regiment trait. So that's it, guys. That is an in-depth analysis, fine detail, nitty-gritty look at the Thetoid Eagles. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you think that I've missed anything, or you disagree with my stance on this regimental doctrine, anything like that, put it down in the comment section below. If you think that I've missed anything, or there's an idea that I haven't considered, put it down in the comment section below. I do read all the comments and I try and get back to as many of them as possible. Also, if you're a newer player and you're not sure about something, check that comment section down below, because there's a good chance that someone from the community, and we do have a really great active community around the Mordian Glory channel, there's a good chance someone's put it down there already and your question may already have been answered. So I highly recommend you go and check out the comment section. That's where it's all going on. So without further ado, I'm going to end this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Any questions, put them down below. And of course, I'll see you guys next time.